I'm Jim Check. With me, Ian Burns, managing editor all the way out there in the nation's capital. Beautiful day here in the Okanagan on Hallows Eve, I guess you would call it. Is this Hallows Eve? Oh, the day before Halloween, anyway. And people probably.
I don't know if they call it that. I think that is the name for actual Halloween, isn't it? All Hallows Eve.
Whatever. Hey. Excuse to get dressed up. We got a really big show, as usual. We're on every morning at 9 a.m. live, and then you can watch it later if you want. U.S. Senate votes to end Canadian tariffs. Does it really mean anything? Ford asks Carney to join him under the bus. U.S. Senate selling the budgets with special interest groups. Imagine that. I'm adding a little editorial to our headlines. Carney kicking the tires on diesel subs. Liberals still pitching climate agenda while the world has moved on. Grand Master of Climate Change says emergency is over. EV mandate under growing pressure. Canada outlook grim. EV says bring it on. Is that movie that Bring It On? Cheerleading movie. China. And what's happening in the UK. All that and a lot more on the Really Big Show. We got lots today. Lots that's not even in the headline stuff. There lots and lots of stuff. But we're going to kick it off first with, who knew what, when, and where, and how? And Pierre Poilievre asking the Liberals who knew what, when, and where, and how, and all those questions. Let's listen to Pierre Poilievre.
His latest excuse was that an Ontario government ad prevented him from keeping his promise. So, yes or no? Did the Prime Minister or his staff see the ad before it went out?
Our government, Mr. Speaker, was elected to negotiate an agreement with the United States.
Yes or no? Did the Prime Minister see the ad before it went out?
Our government is committed to working with all partners in our federation.
He claims he was on the verge of getting that deal. Yeah. So surely if he saw an ad that would interrupt the deal, he would have said no and hit the brakes. So the question is, yes or no?
That's good. That's good. Yes or no? Let's. I was going to play this long clip of Mark Carney talking about when he was asked, and he didn't know how to say yes or no either. But here's the person with the answer, Doug Ford himself.
Back to the Reagan ad. How do you know the Prime Minister and his Chief of Staff saw this particular ad before you moved ahead with airing it?
I was with them.
There you go. Doug Ford knows how to answer a question. I was with him.
Yeah, and why is he answering a question straight? Because he's obviously upset with his Lord and Master.
Yeah, Carney threw him under the bus by being evasive on the question, the same as many of the Liberals there being very evasive on the question. And Doug didn't want to be under the bus all by himself. So
Carney should have known better than to try and throw him under a bus. I mean, I pity the bus that tries to crush him.
Yeah, Doug's
going to need some new tires.
Doug Ford not taking it. He's like, you want to go under the bus? Let's go under the bus. Doug Ford, though, celebrating. There was a vote in the Senate, and it was a resolution to end the American tariffs on Canada. But again, it's the way that the American government works. It's a vote in the Senate, which is it passed. So, but then it has to go to Congress, and then it has to go to the president. So, because he can veto it, and it can go around in circles for a while. But
there's also an argument ongoing, which is gone to the Supreme Court very soon, which is related to who has the power to do this kind of thing. Because Congress is supposed to have control of the trade, which is why Trump invented those nonsense emergencies about fentanyl at the Canadian border and things like that. Because he would have permission, because then it would be a sort of national security issue. I mean, as usual with the American separation of powers, it's madness a lot of the time, and it's hard to know. And then it's hard to know who's actually got the power, and that's when the courts come in and they have the final say.
But I mean, it does show that there were some Republicans that sided. I think there was 4 Republicans that sided with. So there is, like I said, we've been saying this all along. There's many Americans that don't want to see this big tiff that's going on. So, I mean, there's some states, especially the ones, the border states, that do a lot of business with Canadian companies. So,
But there's just no, like, there's barely any Americans out there who are like gunning for Canada. When Trump always talked about tariffs, it was really meant for one country, wasn't it? And that's China.
China, China.
As Donald Trump won the argument. Donald Trump won the argument on China. If you can cast your mind back to 2015, 2016, where China wasn't even close to being recognized for what it really is and the threat that it really poses. He won all that debate. He won that argument almost single-handedly. But there's never been an argument about Canada being a threat, because obviously Canada isn't a threat, and no American or no sane American thinks that.
Let's move on to the budget, though, because that's what they're pitching right now, and they're pitching it hard. But Danielle Smith's getting in front of this one as well, saying my thoughts on the upcoming federal budget, and then talking about an alternate reality. This is a piece in the Financial Post, and saying, what if we already had a Northern Gateway and an Energy East and Keystone XL pipelines? What a different country we'd have right now. And I mean, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to figure that stuff out. And we still can't say the words oil, though.
Energy East, I mean, Northern Gateway, that's just an absolute no-brainer. But Energy East, I mean, what's beneath a no-brainer? I can't think. I mean, that's the most obvious thing that any serious country would have done many, many years ago. This probably should have been done in like the 70s or something like that, when the oil sands were first being built up.
And the Keystone XL pipeline was basically almost like, it was in progress. But
at least for that one, you could say it was Biden. It was a force that was outside of Canadian control.
They celebrated
the Northern Gateway and Energy East were completely Canadian territory.
But the Liberals celebrate that when they killed, because that was his first day on the job. He killed Keystone XL.
Crazy, and that's because, and that was to appease a lot of his donors who had given him vast sums of money for that very reason. Just that. That's all they wanted, and obviously he reciprocated. He gave them their reward.
So that was probably the only day he actually used a pen to sign executive orders. And we're going to talk about Kamala later here in this. But Francois Philippe Champagne is out there leaking the budget or pitching. And guess who he's pitching to? Special interest groups. Here we go. Talking about $500 million to advance equality and inclusion across Canada. So there's Francois Philippe Champagne. I don't know where they're getting the money. I thought they were talking about they were going to cut that women's department, and all of a sudden they just got $500 million more. And, they had warned about austere times ahead, sacrifices necessary, but not so much for the feminists and LGBTQ groups. Announced on Wednesday, they is set to announce $382 million to advance women's equality, and also set to include $54 million to support LGBT communities, $7.5 million for pride events, and $223 million to respond to gender-based violence in the form of a hotline. How much of that will go towards just administration, and how much will go towards an actual phone is the question with you look at the Liberal track record.
But also research projects, that's the other thing. A hotline and research projects, and we know what that tends to mean, really. It's just kind of, this is patronage. This is like,
special
it's
interest.
as clear as anything. Read about the American presidential elections in the 19th century and the phenomenon of patronage within a sort of quasi-democracy, where, lots of people would come and back a president or a party. They'd get in power, and then they would just dish out patronage in the form of jobs, contracts, money, all the rest of it. That's all this is. This is just pure patronage. I mean, another way to look at it is it's just corruption. This is just, okay, these are our foot soldiers. This is our team. So we're going to give them taxpayers' money because we're in control of the treasury now. So we're going to open it up to them, to our allies.
Isn't it funny
if this was going on in another way, like if I'm not even sure who you'd say the Conservatives' main sort of groups are, like just to make it all very on the nose, let's say kind of like Christian groups or something like that. If they did that and they gave money to them, you can imagine, gun lobbies, I guess, you can just imagine, can't you, what CBC HQ would look like right now, what the CBC front page would look like. But obviously, because it's this, CBC loves all this anyway. To the CBC, this is just like, grass will grow. the sun will shine, happiness for all people. Like, they don't even think to interrogate this because this is just great stuff to them.
It's Chrystia Freeland said that the Liberals wasted 10 years on identity politics and virtue signaling. What is this other than that? This is the thing they leak out of the budget first. This is it. And when Carney stood up in front of Parliament there, his first speech, what did he say? Look around, more than half women. They're on the same path. They're still talking, we're going to talk about it later, they're still talking about a climate agenda while the world has moved on. It's the same Liberal Party, same agenda, the same.
Yeah, but it's like a successful general that's won a battle. You've got to distribute the booty, got to make sure that the loot goes around. Other soldiers might defect and they might join another army and challenge you. It's as basic as that.
Well,
it's just sharing the spoils.
We did the story, was a while back, maybe it was 3-4 weeks ago, when we talked about and I can't remember how many hundreds of millions it was given to women's groups to advance women's business. And it was basically an abysmal failure. There was no groups that didn't increase employment. We can go back and watch that. We should find that. But it was absolute, like, a waste of money. Nothing happened. And then this one, like you said, there's $223 million going to research projects. You know where that's going, right?
But this money it's for the same purpose, to put women in leadership roles. It's probably even the same program. And that's what that $382.5 million is for. That's just like the lump sum announced up front, and then there's a certain amount that's going to be annualized. That's sort of built into the package. But we were talking the other day, weren't we, about when Rebel and Juno, whoever it was, they hijacked so they were accused of hijacking. They successfully asked questions. They knew how to get in line.
They knew how to line up
at the debate. Yeah, one of the questions that they asked, which caused so much pearl clutching, caused hair to be pulled out and tears to flow at the CBC, was, what is a woman? Well, when you look at things like this, that's kind of an important question, isn't it? What's a woman then? You got all this money for women, so what is a woman? Can you define one? Other leaders in other countries, it might seem ridiculous, might seem like it's frivolous, but leaders of other countries have been asked this question and have answered it. What's the Liberal Party's opinion of this?
Renee was telling me about a form, and I'm not going to get the name right, but she said there was a form with one of the parties that had it said men and not men. That's the box.
That's NDP.
Yeah,
it's the NDP.
Men, not men. It's like, okay.
Well, that's the NDP who, what did they do? They said that they had there was a quota for something like non-cisgender white males or something like. They're using terminology that was kind of out of date, even in radical American universities like a decade ago. They're using that now as if it's like the latest hot thing. It's just yet another example of how out of date a lot of major institutions and the sort of leaders in Canada are. They're like feasting on American ideas from a decade ago. It's kind of pitiable, frankly.
Carney's out there in South Korea kicking the tires on some diesel subs, though. Carney taking a look at these Hanwha's KSS 3 subs, diesel subs. You know, it's going to take 6 years to build them, about $2 billion to build one. Canada wants to buy a fleet of 12. Australia, on the other hand, is buying a nuclear sub. Just go on ChatGPT, just go anywhere and just ask the question, like the capabilities of nuclear versus diesel.
And he announced today, the PMO announced, Carney's press office announced today that he signed some deal, defense and economic cooperation with South Korea, which is just a lot of words that doesn't really mean an awful lot. But one of the things that they're going to cooperate on apparently is submarine warfare, which is quite interesting. I'll be making the Germans a little bit nervous because they're the other bidder.
But I mean, it's easy for Carney to sign deals when we're giving stuff away. Where's the trade coming our way? That's the thing. Like, we haven't seen any of that because they would be trumpeting that from the rooftops of every place they could find, but I haven't seen it. But Tim Hodgson out there, again, guess what he's trumpeting? Congratulations to NorthX, Arca, and Microsoft for their innovation and leadership in none other than carbon capture, carbon dioxide removal.
Yeah,
Right?
I was going to say they've got a new euphemism. They've got a new term for it.
Just like those two guys on the Now Media show, the really big show, keep talking about climate drift and the carbon capture. So let's just say carbon dioxide removal.
Does that sound better? I don't know. I'm not sure if that's better. Maybe they'll change it to CDR.
We're going to
That sounds
attract
a bit
all
more
the companies
mysterious.
that are fleeing the United States because they can't get any tax credits because they've scrapped all the stuff. And so they're going to be piling in here to Canada to get all the tax credits. But Hodgson also said he's rallying G7 countries around a new critical mineral alliance. Trump almost kiboshed that whole need right away, though, too, because he got that deal from China yesterday and said that China is not going to stop the flow of rare earth minerals to anybody in the world, at least for a year. So
yeah, that's not really good enough, though, is it? I mean, the decision has been made long ago, I think, to get away from China on that. Because in the case of the Americans, they can't even we talk about submarines and things like that, fighter jets, aircraft carriers. They don't work without those minerals. And it's the Chinese that have. I mean, people say like close to a monopoly. They have a monopoly. It's like 92% or something like that of refined rare earth metals.
If you go through this story, like, I mean, it says a lot about nothing again. Like, how do we get a mine permitted? They're set to announce an announcement. You know what I mean? Like, that's what we have. We have announcements to announce announcements. You're going to set a new alliance to secure critical minerals for G7 countries. What does that mean? What does that mean? And it says that its energy markets are being reshaped by geopolitical conflict, technological revolutions, and an accelerating drive towards net zero. You believe that? The last part there? Accelerating drive to net zero? Who's in it? Who's in this drive? Because we're going to talk about that lots later. Everybody left. You're going to lead because you're going to be the only one in it. You're going to lead it, all right. And
like driving the bus.
And then ahead of the G7 meetings, they got that COP30 coming up here right away. As head of those, Energy Minister announces funding for green tech projects. Announced millions of dollars for, imagine that, millions of dollars for clean tech projects ahead of the G7 ministerial meetings starting tomorrow. And those are for, guess what? Ready? Announcing multi-million-dollar investments in none other than carbon capture and battery projects. How many failed battery projects are in Canada right now? How many do we have? How many? How many do you know of that have closed that after we've spent billions of dollars? How many are dead? But we're going to put more in, and then carbon capture, which is basically the ability of companies like Brookfield, give them the ability to tax our energy and our wealth. But Hodgson announced $16 million taxpayer cash will be spent on carbon capture and battery projects in none other than Quebec, BC, and Newfoundland and Labrador. Hodgson said Canada was aiming to create markets for important items held in a chokehold by nations who do not share our values. What does that mean again? Who is it that's not sharing our values? Like the rest of the world?
I guess it's
that would be everybody.
China and Russia or something. Yeah.
That would be everybody right now that is not. Again, who bought LNG from the Americans? Japan, South Korea, Germany.
I mean, who's still buying oil from the Russians? Basically everybody, in one way or another. Even if it has to go through the Indians or something like that, basically everyone's still at the trough. So, I mean, that just goes to show how ridiculous it is to have kind of like a value-based geopolitical master plan. It's a little bit naive, isn't it?
Including Canada has been accused of buying Russian washed oil.
Yeah. Somebody here says that we've got rare earths, but we just don't have any way to process them.
No, that's
it's
the
not
problem.
even that hard. It's not even hard to process them or refine them. So it's not even a question of, we couldn't achieve this technological breakthrough. The problem is that it's filthy. It's a very dirty process. And there is just no way. This is a country where you can't even build a pipeline, just like a totally innocuous, safe, nice, smooth piece of metal going through, the trees. You can't even do that in Canada. Never mind refine rare earth metals. There's just no way that would be permitted.
So that is one of the biggest misnomers or myths out there. The rare earth minerals themselves aren't rare. It's the processing that's rare and the handling of it. And that's what Iain's saying. The Chinese figured it out and they're doing it en masse. They're the ones processing it. There is a big lithium plant that Tesla's built itself so it can manage its own battery needs. And they're doing that in Texas, so they're controlling the supply chain. But very few people, I mean, it's hard to get a mine permitted here, never mind processing of stuff. Like, it's just crazy. But Bill Gates made that announcement there the other day that the climate existential threat is over. And of course, every news outlet except for CBC. I looked on CBC and I couldn't find where Bill Gates came to the conclusion. We're going to get to his conclusion. But here's a few of the outlets here talking about the end of the existential threat.
Donald Trump was sworn in January and completely demolished the entire global climate agenda, capped off with that phenomenal speech face to face to the UN General Assembly in New York, just trashing the whole climate agenda, mocking them. Bill Gates realizes there's been no pushback and that this is a dead end. I mean, decades of lies about solar wind. So let's not forget, though, who Bill Gates is. This is the man who, according to NBC News, was America's #1 farmland owner, pushing lab-grown meat, pushing the fake meat, vegetable oil, processed meat. He's also the man who invested millions of dollars in Harvard University.
They just go on and on and on. But then there's this other one here, like I think this is Newsmax, maybe? Let's play this, just a bit of this Newsmax clip here, because it really affected our kids. Lots of kids that I've talked to say they don't even want to have kids because they're worried about climate, the existential threat. Let's play a little bit of this one here.
2024 Lancet study of Americans 16 to 25, majority very or extremely worried about climate change. Over half said they were hesitant to have kids because of their anxiety. There is a tremendous amount of climate angst in this country, all built up because Democrats needed a way to convince you to vote for their party and to scare you into doing it. Carrie Lake is here to talk about that.
That's good. Well,
it's amazing.
But Bill Gates obviously was one of the big leaders, and we got a little clip here from Bill Gates from the 2019 when he said even cows, we had to get rid of the cows.
Bovine flatulences was how great a problem bovine flatulences. is. Nobody knows how to get rid of how to get cows to stop farting.
Exactly, or burping. And so there is artificial meat, but that's at a very early stage. If it was a 50% reduction, then you could ignore, okay, leave the cows alone. But because we're trying to avoid the temperature continuing to go up, you do need to go to zero.
Not just everything should be solely for climate. Wasn't the goal here to improve human lives? Climate is super important, but has to be considered in terms of overall human welfare.
Yes.
It's basically, okay, so we've lost the argument. The people have expressed a desire for something else. So now we're just going to try and patronize them and fool them and manipulate them into doing what we wanted in the first place. But we're just going to advertise it differently. We're going to describe it differently.
And then the thing is,
it's not a carbon tax; it's a levy.
who was selling fake meat? Bill Gates seemed to have the solution, similar to Mark Carney seems to have the solution for everything. We're going to do carbon capture, and guess who does carbon capture? Brookfield. Isn't that amazing how those things work out? Bill Gates says you've got to get rid of the cows and just eat fake meat, and guess who sells fake meat? Like that, Bill Gates had the solution built right in. Ingenious, no?
He also said, though, and I don't know, I assume it's the same clip, but later on, he also said what a lot of people have whispered for quite a long time, which is that even in the worst case scenario, 2 degrees centigrade, temperature being 2 degrees centigrade higher than it was in 1850 in 2100, that's not actually the end of the world. And he went even more hardcore. He was like, most of humanity will still thrive and flourish and will still be like happy little bees. So it's like, that just totally undermines the last sort of at least 20 years since Al Gore did that documentary. It undermines decades of warnings and threats and propagandizing, some would say. It's just so strange how that can just be jettisoned. It's just like, we don't need that anymore. I just find
Donald-
that really quite shocking. I find that to be hard to understand.
Donald Trump wasted no time, though, coming out and putting a stick in it. And he put the flag up and says the climate hoax is over. And he did say all that stuff at the UN meeting as well. Trump declares victory. And
I love the way he wrote that. I, brackets, we.
you can go to, there you go. That's CTV. Like, that must have been tough for CTV even put that up. Trump declares victory against climate hoax. But again, this is a big story that's everywhere in the international media. But if we go to the CBC right now, and guess what? Don't see it anywhere.
But like, this is the theme. This is the theme of Canadian politics and society and culture, I'm afraid, decades in the past. So I guess now, where are we? Are we at the sort of Greta Thunberg early 2010s? Is that where we are in Canada? And we've just got to wait another 10, 15 years, and then we'll figure that out and be like, oh yeah, okay, we do represent a tiny fraction of global emissions. There is nothing that we can do in this country to change the global temperature. And even if the temperature increases by 2 degrees, worst case scenario, it's not the end of the world.
So here's
is that what we're gonna? Are we gonna arrive at that in 15 years? Is that how this works?
I couldn't find anything on this big admission by Gates, but I did find a story here below the fold here. 3 U.S. National Guard members say they'll defy order to deploy in Chicago. That's a story on CBC. That's a story. They found 3 people that said that.
Take that, Trump.
But COP30 is going on, and guess what? They're gonna like, these people that are into it big time are not gonna let go easy. Let's listen into this little speech here, because they're going to come after you for the cows. Well, there was a video. No? Can you see if you can find it? There's his name there. Yeah, and take a look at it. But yeah, I mean, this is a big story. This should be huge. Every outlet should be carrying it. I mean, it's all over the U.S. outlets. When Gates made that, I mean, they're interviewing him right now, and he's basically saying that it's, like, we don't need, it's not an existential threat. We can bring it back from DEFCON 5 or whatever, and focus on other things that actually let people eat. But this guy,
and also,
we can't find it.
Bill Gates hasn't just done this himself. All Bill Gates is doing is quoting from the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the IPCC, the most respected climate change body on the planet. They said this years ago. That's what I always, when I reference these predictions, that's what I'm referencing, which makes it so strange. It's not like Bill Gates has gone out and done a massive research project into emissions or something like that. He's just decided to interpret what information that we all had access to in a different way.
Any luck?
Meat and dairy.
Well, let's play it.
Eat meat and dairy. This is causing 20% of all greenhouse gas emissions. So it's damaging a lot of things in the world. Climate change is caused for 20% by meat and dairy. So the producers of meat and dairy should pay for the damage they cause. That's normal. When I damage the window of my neighbor, I have to repair this damage. But meat and dairy processors also have to repair.
Okay. I believe this was at COP29, but COP30 starts here.
Is he a eunuch?
What's that?
Is he a eunuch? I didn't know we had eunuchs in this century.
But anyway, so again, they're not going to let go easy. And Carney likely is 4 years too late to become prime minister, because, like I said, the Americans have moved on. The Chinese never moved in. India never moved in. Even the European nations, many of them have moved on. Japan moved on. Everybody's moving on. And Carney is going to lead in an area of one. And well, there might be a couple in there. France, maybe.
The British government, as
UK,
it might not, but the British government is an endangered species right now. The Labour Party, anyway, they're on the way out, because they also, like in Canada, they are yesterday's men. Nobody's listening to them anymore. Everyone else has moved on, but they're still banging the drum like it's 2012.
The Mark Carney there. Traveling in Donald Trump's wake. Maybe they should have went at a different time. I guess they're going for that summit, but Trump's making deals and Carney's doing photo ops and signing guest books. But here's another well put together influencer clip. Yeah, no, we don't want to play the music.
Beautiful light.
It is. Like, that's what I'm saying. It's a great influencer clip, right? You know what I mean? If you paid an influencer to travel along with you, obviously they probably have paid somebody to do this for him. And they didn't get the shot where actually in the background of this, where he's getting off this plane here, is actually Air Force One right in the background.
Yeah, it's a little sad, isn't it?
And then I was going to play this, but I won't do it. Well, we'll play a little bit of it, but here's the audio of Stellantis' robocalls to all the employees that got laid off. This is from an MP that retweeted this here. Let's play a little bit of this clip here.
This is breaking news. I just got this audio recording. I cannot show the video. I can only share the audio, so listen to this.
This is Plant Manager Alex Pittis. I'm calling today because I want to share some important news that involves our plant. Our CEO, Antonio Pelosa, just announced the largest single investment in our company's 100-year history, $13 billion over the next 4 years to grow our business in the U.S. What does this mean for Brampton Assembly? As part of this announcement, we will be transitioning Jeep Compass production from Brampton to the U.S. We understand this is incredibly difficult news, and we want to acknowledge the impact it has on you, your families, and the entire Brampton team. Our leadership has plans for Brampton and will share them upon further discussions.
That's good.
Still a lot clearer than any speech Mark Carney's ever made, but nonetheless quite disrespectful.
The Conservatives put forward a motion to end the EV mandate, and guess who voted against it?
Everybody, I would imagine. Is it not just the Liberals?
Yep. So there you go. They've been told by the American auto manufacturers, get rid of the EV mandate. The 6 CEOs, and then the head of the automobile manufacturers here in Canada said, get rid of it. But they're there to help the automobile manufacturers. They're going to fight for every job other than remove the EV mandate that is actually killing the jobs. Makes sense? Must make sense to somebody.
It does make sense. It does make sense if you go back to what we were saying about those LGBT and feminist groups and all the rest of it. Like, you'd think at a time like this, why would you be chucking that kind of money around? But then you just think about the dynamics of the Liberal Party. To apply the same logic to this. This is just another example of patronage. It's an attempt to try and give something to the climate lobby, as they call themselves.
And the reason that the automobile manufacturers want the EV mandate tossed is because they don't make money making EVs. And here's GM, even in the US. They're going to cut EV battery production and 1,200 jobs at Detroit plant because they're going back to gas, hybrids. That's where they're making money, so that's what they're going to do. And you know, I put it on my LinkedIn. If Carney really wants to keep an automobile sector here in Canada, pitch to GM and Ford and that, and talk to Trump and say, we'll do all the EV stuff here. Maybe they'll let you have the EV plans because, you know, Trump doesn't care about them. And, you know, I know they don't want to completely give up on their EV plans, but I don't know.
It's just an attempt. It's like a heavy-handed attempt, isn't it, from the government to try and lead and guide commercial activity. I would have thought that we learned our lesson in the previous century about this kind of thing. Doesn't really work, does it? Especially when you have such low-grade people. I'm sorry to say, such low-grade people who think that they can step into a market, numerous markets, like such complex things. They think that they can just step in and say, this is what's going to happen. I mean, the obvious has now occurred, hasn't it? And it will just keep being the same thing until they recognize the limits of their own power.
But if you had a little bit of common sense, you would look to California, which is the EV hotbed of the United States of America. and they got about a 20% adoption rate. And you would say, their climate's different than Canada's as well. But we want 100% adoption in Canada. Weird. Weird. We're going to skip for the Blanchette thing here, but look at this. A surge of misconduct cases. The Public Sector Integrity Commissioner says she needs triple the number of staff lawyers to handle a growing number of complaints of wrongdoing by federal managers. A surge of submissions left a backlog of hundreds of whistleblower complaints alleging misconduct and corrupt practices. The government is just rife with this stuff, like in so many departments. And now they need more lawyers. That's going to cost more money. With the current caseload and resources, most cases are being delayed at the initial submission stage before assignment to an analyst. The commissioner's office currently has 8 lawyers on staff. It needs 22. That's how much corruption and misconduct is going on in these federal ministries. The backlog of complaints from federal whistleblowers is 283 cases. Whistleblower complaints are investigated under the 2007 Public Servants Disclosure Protection Act, intended to shield federal employees from reprisal. And then don't rock the boat, is what they're being told. A 2022 federal report said employees were increasingly unlikely to report corrupt practices. The reality is workplace culture is dominated by an attitude that no one should rock the boat. And that's from the report.
That's such an indictment, that, isn't it? That's just, they don't call out corruption because you don't rock the boat.
What is that? Well, another way to say that is like everybody's feeding well at the trough. Why would you wreck it? Do you know what I mean? Like, everybody's getting lots. Shh, quiet now.
Yeah, basically.
You're going to ruin it for everybody. Like, we're all at this trough. That's CBC, basically. They're at the trough. And, like other media outlets like us to complain about Bill C-18, they're basically saying, shut up, right? We're making out like bandits here.
But where's the patriotism? Like, to work for the federal government, you have to be a Canadian citizen, I think, in almost most jobs anyway, in most cases, unless they've changed that as well as with the military.
So
where's the patriotism? Where's the like, oh, this is my country being like undermined from within? I love Canada, therefore, but apparently not. It's just like, let's not rock the boat.
So the whistleblowers, this is what the whistleblowers got. And Canadians should be just absolutely, and go find this story on CBC. Go try and find it. Go find it there. And the whistleblowers, this is what they get. Reprisals range from being shunned by other employees to reassignment, increased workload, having one's work increasingly scrutinized, being labeled as untrustworthy, and ultimately fired. Don't rock the boat. Everybody's feeding at the trough. Canadians can't put food on the table, and they want you to be quiet there in the federal government. Just because how are we supposed to just feast while Canadians starve? I don't know.
Very sad, isn't it?
And
the people that do report end up being shunned by other
that's
employees.
What I mean. Because it's basically like, what are you doing? It's like I used to work in an accounting firm, and one of the things that we had a client come in and they were trying to sell, I think it was a laundromat, and they're just like, what's the average for skimming? And we're just like, what? Well, I need to sell the business now. I need to know what the average of skimming is, because I skim, but I don't know what the average is. What can I tell you? I'm just like, what is going on here? What's the average? Jeez. And here's our #1 finance guy that, again, surprises me that he still has his job. Tiff Macklin there, that told Canadians to go out, I'm never going to forget that, told Canadians to go out and get that mortgage. Don't worry about it. They're going to keep interest rates at this level into the foreseeable future, and then raise them 19-fold in unprecedented fashion, trapping many Canadians. And then what's the liberal senator say? Those people deserve what they get. That's very, very nice, isn't it? But now Tiff Macklin says, people should be getting ready for a lower standard of living. What we're going through is not just a cyclical downturn. What I told you by cyclical means you go up and down. This is structural. We've been saying that. Economic winter is coming to Canada. Either put on a coat or go find sunnier weather. And what did our fearless leader, Mark Carney, do? He didn't put on a coat. He went to sunnier weather. He took Brookfield to the United States of America, and Brookfield just did a big deal down in the United States. And he also moved his investments there to sunnier climates. And a lot of people have.
Well, certainly, yeah, its money is getting a nice suntan. That's for sure.
And a reporter asked him, what do you see as the most concerning long-term impact? And just like clownish. It says incomes will be lower than otherwise would be.
It's terrible to hear the head of the central bank saying, unless we change things, our standard of living as a country, as Canadians, is going to be lower than it otherwise would have been. That's such a horrible...
One of the richest nations in the world.
That's like a bag of razor blades for the average Canadian to try and swallow that. Because the average Canadian already feels like their standard of living has been declining for at least 10 years. And data supports that feeling.
Again, just look down at your feet, because below your feet is all our wealth. And this Liberal government and NDP will not let us tap it. And they want you to instead have this, because they want to sell you carbon capture. And that, how does that feel? How'd you like a bowl of carbon capture on the table and see if your kids, virtue signaling as well. There's a lot of that. You can have, a side dish of virtue signaling, some identity politics.
But also just the kind of bureaucratic industrial complex that just blocks everything and sues, like files a lawsuit over everything that ever happens. Anybody tries to build anything. And the attitude as well, it's a cultural thing, isn't it? Evan Solomon, the AI minister, was interviewed by CBC on the radio just a few hours ago. And, there's lots of hype, like when they introduced him. Can you guess what the first question was from the CBC? It was, so how do we regulate this? That's kind of, in a nutshell, that tells you everything you need to know, doesn't it?
Well, here, the good news for Canada on the regulating of AI is we don't have any to regulate, so we'll have to regulate the American.
That's not what Evan Solomon said. He was talking about, we invented AI, talking about Geoffrey Hinton, an English scientist who came to move to Canada, and some other fella, Sutton, can't remember his name, an American AI pioneer who also came to live in Canada. But he's saying because of those two, apparently Canada invented AI, and we're great. But also let's regulate it, even though we don't have much of an AI infrastructure in place.
I just interviewed one of the speakers at Geoffrey Hinton's talks that are happening in Toronto here in November, and he may be knowledgeable in AI, but they're not running any AI. There's not open AI. It's not practical application stuff. So I don't know what Canada's leading in.
But it's just like, the English, the English people invented industrial civilization, which is like everything you see around you. Go to the Pearl River Delta in China. Look at all the industrial, the industrial corporations or whatever going on. All the activity going on there. What do we get? What do the English people get for that? What does Canada get for having Canadians invented certain medical techniques and all the rest of it? What does that actually entitle you to? Unless it's a business and a company that brings money in, it's not ultimately worth much, is it, down the line?
So Tiff, why don't you talk to Canadians about leading and lagging indicators? A lot of the stuff that Tiff is talking about is lagging indicators. But some of the leading indicators right now are the clear separation of the United States economy and the Canadian economy. And that is going to show up here in the next 6 months and the next year, and it's going to be shocking to most people. Investment capital flowing out of Canada into the United States, massive amounts, and Brookfield is an example of that. Massive amounts flowing into the United States, so they're going to see this golden age, and Canada is going to be looking over the fence and wondering what happened as all the carbon grifters show up in Canada looking for tax dollars. In a country that won't be able to even drive revenue to cover all these grifters that are going to be looking for tax dollars from the taxpayer. Explain it to us. Here's the 5-year rates versus the 5-year variable rates right now. And you can kind of see that even though rates have started to come down, 5-year rates of, like the mortgage rates are, they're not really buying into it that much, right? The rates are still relatively high when people are looking to, do their mortgage, right? The 5-year rate is still hanging in there. So, and that's why I think a lot of people now are a little bit scared of the variable rates. But again, that rate needs to come down. And then China in the news. Everybody's there. I mean, in South Korea, and President Xi met with President Trump. I imagine, I haven't seen Carney's visit yet with President Xi. Have you seen it? Is that scheduled for today?
He's going to meet him today at, I believe it's 4 p.m. Is it local time? I don't know what that is, but yeah, it's supposed to happen today anyway.
But a Liberal-appointed senator last March attended meetings in China and stressed the need to view each other as partners, not rivals. That came only days after Prime Minister Carney called China the biggest threat to national security. A report by the Canada-China Legislative Association detailed a about $43,000 junket to Beijing and Guangzhou. Did I say that right? By Senator
Guangzhou.
Guangzhou, there you go. So, hey, they can spend our money pretty good, but no safe drinking water for our military and no flushing toilets. But hey, if we're going to go on a junket, spare no expense. But
and Guangzhou is one of the richest cities in China as well. It's like a very prosperous place.
But they look thrifty compared to the Canadian consul there in Manhattan that lives in that $8.8 million penthouse. Because he said that he needed that for his lifestyle. Well, our military has no safe drinking water or flushing toilets. We've reached out to Stephen Fear a couple times now. Even Steve has, and still no response. Imagine that.
Steve to Steve still didn't work.
Relatives of Canadians murdered by Hamas say Carney has ignored every message. The relatives of Canadians murdered by the Islamist terror group Hamas in Israel 2 years ago have denounced Mark Carney for failing to meet with them. The Association of Families of the Canadian Victims of October 7th says Carney, unlike leaders in the UK, France, and the US, has not met with the bereaved family members and accused him of having ignored every message and every letter we sent him.
It's not a good look.
No, but the only time I can remember Mark Carney with a clear answer so far is when he was asked if he would arrest Benjamin Netanyahu, and the answer was yes. Other than that, you get these long responses that you're at the end of it, you're going, was that a yes, a no, maybe? Not sure.
But the thing is, again, it goes back to the Liberal Party and the Liberal Party's priorities. It's about maintaining power. It's about maintaining that kind of coalition of voters. And unfortunately for the Jewish people, and this has kind of always been an issue for the Jewish people, I suppose, there aren't very many of them. But there are quite a lot of people who are obsessed with Gaza and Palestine. And there are more Muslims who obviously that tends to be the demographic most interested in Gaza. So it's just pure electoral calculus. It's like, yeah, obviously I'm going to go down to a mosque now and I'm going to talk about Gaza or something like that, because that is in the interests of the Liberal Party if they wish to maintain power.
Somebody's saying that our Canadian military is a joke, and I'm just going to defend the military for a bit here. I mean, the young men and women that join the military don't want it to be a joke. They just are underfunded, under-equipped, undermanned, and underpaid. And so you're going to attract people that have, they maybe are not the best. They couldn't even get immigrants to join the Canadian military. It's been neglected. It's been absolutely neglected. So the joke really is the party in power that controls the purse strings. They have $8.8 million to give it to a Canadian consul. They have tons of money to give it to gender equality rice. What was it the other day? How many millions of dollars for gender equality rice in Vietnam? How many 109 million for gender equality to China? Like, we could go on and on and on. And they didn't even give decent sleeping bags for a military that actually has to defend our Arctic. You could have went to Canadian Tire to buy better sleeping bags. It's an absolute travesty. We have we have diesel subs that are like, I don't even want to get into it.
But it's the same in all over the place. It's not just the military. The elite, if we want to call them that, the ruling class, the managerial class, the people at the top, across Canadian society, are embarrassingly low grade in so many cases. But the average Canadian, at least this is obviously subjective, but in my experience, not low grade at all. And I'm sure that is true in the military, as it is in every other sort of area of life in this country. The people are being held back by their incompetent masters. It really does seem to be as simple as that.
Chorus reported today, and Chorus is global news, one of the public ones that doesn't get access to the trough like, they get a lot of funding, but they don't get access to the trough like the CBC. But again, here you go. Revenues dropped 14% for the quarter and 11% for the year. Profits drop, everything drops. Television revenues, advertising, modestly lower. The executives, the last time I read their financial statements, made out like bandits.
Yeah, I wonder what's he getting, John Gosling? What's his remuneration package, I wonder?
I mean, I can go through the statements tomorrow. The thing is, but when they're publicly reporting, they show all this stuff, right? But, they got a bunch of debt that they have to renew, or like when it's coming due, they're going to try and sell shares for it. I mean, this thing used to be close to a $20 stock. It's 9 cents. Well, today it's 10 cents. There you go. You can buy some Chorus stock. Bill C-18 crippling media here in Canada, and it's right there. Like, you can just look at it. There it is, right there. But hey, not according to the Liberals. It's there to help you. And according to Stephen Guilbeault, the Heritage Minister, it's immoral to even ask the question. Well, somebody should tell that to Chorus. And this is not like they say, like the tariffs are causing some grief here. This stock chart has been dying since Trudeau took power. Go take a look at it. EB flexing again. EB's he's getting a little. He's threatening an election if bill related to transmission line project fails to pass. He's got the Greens there pushing up against him, and he said he's willing to go to an election if Bill 31 related to the North Coast transmission line does not pass in the legislature. The Premier says he doesn't want an election, but is prepared to fight it out over the polls, over the non-negotiable bill. I think he wants an election, actually, because he's riding high in the polls because of the Conservative chaos. I mean, we had Jonathan Kay in. Jonathan Kay says, like, as bad as Canada is, like, BC is just like, you got Conservative Party in chaos and NDP in la-la land. But he said, speaking of that transmission line project, it's not a joke. It's the economic future of this province. Represents $50 billion in investment. John Rustad, who's, lots of people calling for him to resign, of course, says, let's go dance. Like, what is this? It's like a couple of cowboys.
That's like a weak leader, a leader who's threatened at home, loves nothing more than a good war. Because then they can get all the people rallied behind you and go disappear and fight someone else rather than among yourselves.
If John Rustad was to, I think that's the thing that would be scary for EB. If Rustad resigns and you get somebody more into the center, like an Eleanor Sturco. It sounds like I'm plugging Eleanor Sturco. But I think both parties need fresh faces, both the EB as well. I mean, Jason Kenney...
It's funny you should say that, because obviously EB's new on the block, isn't he? He's relatively just turned up, but he's already pretty unpopular.
Jason Kenney said John Horgan even called him a mud hutter, but I don't know. We can't go back to John Horgan and ask him that anymore. John Horgan was a more centrist kind of guy.
Well, yeah, but he did allow a lot of pretty mad things to go on, and he obviously was extraordinarily hostile to TMX, wasn't he? Which was not a very centrist thing to do.
He basically abdicated his responsibilities during COVID as well. He basically just gave the keys to the province to Dr. Bonnie Henry and just let them run the province. Yeah, just gave it to them. Anyway, I interviewed Jeff Moyse again, third time, the lawyer there on the Haida Nation ruling there, Haida Gwaii, formerly the Queen Charlotte Islands, and then what it means to people. Like that Richmond Town Hall the other day caused quite the stir, and people worried about their property rights. But it's a really good interview to go listen to, because we broke down the Haida Nation decision, and then also how it pertained to the Richmond decision, and then what British Columbians can look forward to. There's a lot of other claims in the courts right now too. So, and we can't know how many are in the courts. But even that Richmond decision, the Cowichan tribe was asking for, I think, 1,000 more acres, and they haven't given up on that either. So, like the actual claim, the initial claim was 1,800 acres, and I think they got about 800 of that. So,
yeah, it's a lot of it. It's an extremely complex situation, though, isn't it? Like quite a lot of it does relate to, and I believe that was also, wasn't that also John Hogan's government that signed into law the UNDRIP thing?
that's the one that we talked a lot about, UNDRIP, and BC is the only province to have this, and that, he says, is the dangerous piece of it, and that the change in government would get rid of UNDRIP and maybe take a lot of uncertainty out of it. And I think this, that's
because it's legislation that was put. You know, it's only, that's why it's so much of a BC thing for numerous reasons. But they took that UN declaration and made it law, because otherwise it's just the usual sort of bollocks from the UN that you can pay attention to it if you want, or you can ignore it. But in BC, it's like it's the law of the land.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think there may be an election pending here in British Columbia. So,
and maybe federally as well. That's all they're talking about on the with the budget.
We got some international news for you here.
Coming to you live from the Now Media Newsroom.
China. Trump, they're meeting with President Xi. Let's listen in on this little clip here first.
And it feels very warm seeing you again, because it's been many years. Since your re-election, we have spoken on the phone 3 times, exchanged several letters, and stayed in close contact. And our joint guidance, China-US relations have remained stable on the whole. Given our different national conditions, we do not always see eye to eye with each other. And it is normal for the 2 leading economies of the world to have frictions now and then. And in the face of winds, waves, and challenges, you and I, at the helm of China-US relations, should stay the right course and ensure the steady sailing forward of the giant ship of China-US relations. I always believe that China's development goes hand in hand with your vision to make America great again. Our 2 countries are fully able to help each other succeed and prosper together. Over the years, I have stated in public many times that China and the United States should be partners and friends. This is what history has taught us and what reality demands. A few days ago, in the latest round of consultation...
That's good. So, I mean, one of the things that I noticed, I don't know if you watched a lot of it, I watched most of it, that this is the first interaction I've seen with Trump where he doesn't seem to want to dominate, like with power. It seemed very much, he almost seemed a little bit, what's that word, not his usual self with President Xi.
Subdued. Maybe,
yeah, because, you know, because Xi was very stoic, like didn't say a word. They're standing there, and Trump is, you know, like patting him and, you know, like prodding him and, you know, like just stone-faced, right? Like just, it was different. It was different than his typical thing where he dominates the room, right? He wasn't trying to dominate the room in that case. Interesting.
Yeah, I guess he's, that's a show of respect, I suppose, or fear, perhaps, would be another way to look at it. Something that I thought was interesting. You can see Besant, Rubio, what's his name, Howard Lutnick there.
Lutnick's
so like
there.
the most powerful people in his cabinet, You know, these are like his ministers. But he's also got Susie Wiles there, who's just his
She
chief of
travels all the
staff
time.
in the White House. But it just shows how powerful and important she really is, that she's
She
there at the
travels
table.
everywhere. She's almost everywhere. But she'll, like, if she's sitting at the table, lots of times she'll sit at the table and say they bring in like a Rubio or something. She'll get up and give her spot up at the table and stuff like that. But she is his right hand for sure. And
yeah, she's under scrutinized, perhaps understudied. Like, she's clearly central to everything that he's doing.
She wants no attention, and she's and again, people accuse Trump of being anti-woman, and the first female chief of staff, and obviously lots of power. I mean, everybody says that she carries, like she's one of like Abe Lincoln, walks softly, carries a big stick. But
no, that was Teddy Roosevelt. Wasn't it?
Oh, there you go. I got my presidents wrong, but hey. I got the quote right.
Yeah.
Stockwell Day, remember Stockwell Day? He took a run at it too. The Sea-Doo guy, with the right here on the Okanagan Lake there, stood there with his when he was running for PM. But he says his contacts tell him a deal was done. U.S. reduces tariffs on China from 57 to 47. China lets a minerals deal go for China for U.S. for a year. And they're going to deal with these precursors. Well, that remains to be seen, right? And Trump
I mean, they've been saying that for so long now.
I watched the interview on Air Force One, and it was a bumpy ride. They were in turbulence. And Trump said, out of 10, the meeting was a 12. I always say to people when they say 110%, I just don't know how, like when you're playing sports, how do you give 110%? Is 100% everything? But apparently there's bigger numbers somewhere.
Give something to someone else as well, I guess. That could be the only option.
Yeah, and then there's Scott Bassett there, and he said Trump, I mean, it sounded like, you know, like they got Xi to agree to buy 12 million metric tons of American soybeans this season. And they're going to be buying a minimum of 25 metric tons per annum. So, you know, like again, China says a lot of things, and you know, China says they were going to do climate change too. They didn't do any of that. But it'll be interesting.
And also this thing, the key here is the minerals, the rare earth metals. Because that was a threat. Like, China put its boot on the American throat there in a really, like, in a massive way that threatened everything in America. The American military, the American economy,
AI,
everything.
Right? AI.
Yeah, but I mean, that just shows you how real these negotiations, if you want to call it that shows how real they were. That's how big a deal it really was. But what's interesting is it's a 1 year reprieve. A 1 year. 1 year, that's not long enough to make anybody happy, really, is it? So this is going to be revisited, I think, is the obvious takeaway.
If you look at the what's coming out of the Liberal government, instead of, because we have vast mineral resources here in Canada, vast mineral resources, and some of the best miners. Why aren't we announcing this project going ahead? Why aren't we announcing a refining plant? Why aren't we, you know what I mean? Why aren't we announcing any of that? Instead, Tim Hodgson is standing up there talking about, like, the last couple of announcements have been about carbon capture.
Because the Liberal Party would not survive in power if it did that. Because a core part of its constituency, the environmental group, coalition, whatever, would defect. They'd go to the Green Party or the NDP or whoever, and the Liberals would lose funding and lose votes and lose the next election. So they won't do that, even though it is quite literally life or death. These metals have to be refined in safe countries. They have to. If we wish to survive, if we want Western civilization to survive, we have to refine these minerals in a very dirty, polluting practice. We have to do it. But we're not going to do it in Canada because that would threaten the Liberal Party. End of story.
When I interviewed Brenda Bailey, the finance minister for Canada, I gave her the example of Trilogy Metals, a Canadian company that's in Alaska that the Americans invested, the Department of War invested 10% into them, gave them a bunch of money, and told them they're going to build them a road. And they want that project fast-tracked, and that's rare earth minerals. And I said, Brenda Bailey, are you going to do that here in Canada? She said, yes. I haven't heard any announcements.
Maybe she's working on it. Give her time.
I mean, you'd think Scott Bessett and them would have had a plan for all this stuff. You'd think, right? You would think. What would I know, though, right?
What would us mere peasants? How dare we even have an opinion, frankly? But what's awkward, though, is considering we are such worthless peasants, sometimes we seem to get things right, while our glorious nobles and masters and superiors get things wrong again and again and again and again.
No, I didn't say. I said finance minister of BC, but then I think I mixed up Canada. Somebody just corrected me, texted me. I don't know, finance minister. Yeah, she's Brenda Bailey's finance minister of British Columbia. If I misspoke there. Trump signed a deal with South Korea, $350 billion, and lowered the tariffs charged against the United States, and they're going to buy oil and gas in vast quantities. Again, who asked Canada for LNG? Who was that? Oh, right, the South Koreans. I remember that. Remember? Mark Carney was the economic advisor at the time to Trudeau, and they told them, no business case for LNG. Trump says all the time, you're going to get tired of winning. Well, we say on this show, you're going to get tired of us being right.
Well, I don't know if I assume you've read the rest of this tweet already, but that is also quite relevant to what we discuss a lot, isn't it? Where he's saying, I've given the South Koreans approval to build a nuclear submarine rather than the old-fashioned and far less nimble diesel-powered submarines, which they want to build for us.
Canada puts up its hand. We'll take whatever you got left because you can't use them. Because we know, like, again, for everybody listening or watching, just on ChatGPT, just type it in. Just type it in. Nuclear sub versus diesel sub. The only reason to buy diesel sub is cheaper. You know what else is cheaper? A rowboat. Why not save all that money and maybe do some research studies instead?
Or even submarine, like unmanned submarines, like underwater drones. You're better off doing something like that rather than wasting your money on out-of-date technology, surely. But I just think they've set themselves this target, haven't they? They've got to spend a certain amount of GDP. I think there's always a risk with that, isn't there, where you just end up throwing money at anything just to spend the money.
Where I was going to do, we're not going to do the Joe Kernan story because that's kind of boring. They're just talking about the government shutdown. But here's a little clip for you. Winston Churchill. You remember this speech, I'm sure, as a good Brit would. Let's listen in on this speech here.
We shall defend our island, whatever the cost may be. We shall fight on the beaches. We shall fight on the landing grounds. We shall fight in the fields and in the streets. We shall fight in the hills.
Remember that speech?
I remember that speech. I also remember that music from Red Alert. Red Alert 2, the computer game.
And then this is
pretty hilarious that they put that in the background. But yeah, that's quite a consequential speech that he made. Yeah.
This is Birmingham. Somebody did a walk and talk here in Birmingham. Maybe you can explain it. I don't even know where Birmingham is. It's the largest city in the UK, second largest city in the UK.
Birmingham, you often go on about Detroit and how wealthy Detroit was.
This one?
To see for myself. And these are some of the filthiest streets in the country. People should not have to live like this. The people who are doing this are getting away with it, and the council seems to be doing absolutely nothing. If you think this is bad, wait till you see what happened around the corner the other day.
Filth, piled high on a residential street and left there for days on end. This is how some people are living in parts of Britain today. This vandalism of our streets can't continue.
This is the scene of that fly tipping. Months later, it still looks like a complete disgrace. It's literally got so bad that there's tyres, dirty underwear lying on the street, and the Labour Council is doing nothing about it.
Fly tipping and littering is rife in Birmingham. Good, law-abiding Brits are furious that their street...
That's good.
Yeah, that's Robert Jenrick. We should say, he's a Conservative Party MP. so the opposition. Yeah, Birmingham, like you mentioned Detroit a lot about how it used to be really important and wealthy and all the rest of it. The same is true of Birmingham. It used to be considered just about like the richest big city on earth back in the day. Not even that long ago, really, like half a century or 80 years, something like that, back during the imperial days. Like loads of guns, weapons were made there. It was considered like the armory of the British Empire. But I mean, it did a lot more than that, like metals and things like that. It was a really significant city, but it's kind of like so many other industrial cities in England, it just kind of lost its purpose in the second half of the 20th century, and now it's like what do they call it, majority minority or something like that. They're like white British, like native British people are a minority in Birmingham. It's one of a few parts of England that have that characteristic, and as a consequence it's becoming like the center of a kind of political debate about what's happened to England, really, and the future of England and migration and things like that. So it's kind of like it's a front on the battlefield right now.
And then Vladimir Putin invited journalists into to Moscow there, and then they wanted to show them what was going on. They've encircled a few Ukrainian troops, and I mean, they're playing a really terrible game. But we're just going to play this clip here from NBC.
I'm in Moscow, Russia in October 2025, and this is a exhibition of war trophies taken from the front line in Ukraine. An Abrams tank, again, another piece of US equipment. Inside the Bradley, it is burnt out. You shudder to think of the experience the Ukrainian soldiers would have had. Throughout the time that we've been here, classrooms of Russian children have been enjoying tours of this war museum, including this exhibition dedicated to North Korea's contribution. The war in Ukraine is becoming embedded in the...
Good. Obviously, Putin is running some type of PR campaign to put pressure on inviting journalists in for, I think it must be the first time, inviting them in to look. And they've got some videos also, I don't think I put it in here, videos also of the encircled, a couple of troop movements or a couple of areas in Ukraine where they're almost completely encircled, and asking, like the media to determine what should happen to those troops in there.
Sick, frankly. But no, they've been doing this for a while, and that journalist there was in Moscow. Journalists have some publications have been kicked out. I think the Washington Post was kicked out, weren't they, out of Russia, and some other ones. But there are still Western journalists in Russia, like Steve Rosenberg at the BBC. He's been reporting on these trophies that are displayed of the tanks and stuff. He's been reporting on that for ages. So that's not a new thing. At least, I mean, that might be a new exhibition, but the idea isn't.
Well, they are ramping up a PR campaign for sure, because here's Lavrov too. It says, and this is October 28th, no interest in empty symbolism. They said that they had a deal. They said that Putin and Trump had a deal, that they agreed on things, but now they're saying, well, let's get on with the deal. And I think, like on that deal, it's Zelensky obviously didn't agree to the deal, or I'm not sure, you know what I mean? Like, so.
I think even the Americans weren't willing to tolerate the demands from the Russians. I think that's when Trump started to change his tune, because they're starting to demand territory that they don't even have. Like they haven't even conquered, but they're demanding it. And I think that's driving even the Americans not happy about that.
Here's somebody making fun of Putin's war in Ukraine. Let's take a look at this. But it's actually France that they show here. And again, this is in Europe. Like it's... Yeah, you can kill the music, but like... There you go. I mean, that's... Yeah, you could do that in Canada as well.
I mean, the banlieues in Paris, I don't know if you've been yourself, but if you go on that train, the really deep underground, and it goes out into the suburbs, Just go to Paris and get on that train and prepare for madness. But there are even parts of Paris that it's quite central and it's so rough, like the Pantheon, where they've got Napoleon's tomb or whatever it is. Places like that, like so many rough parts of Paris. It's really quite devastating, actually. But it's nothing new.
The King's son and Yoko Ono were at the Dodgers game there, at the World. Oh no, not they were at the LA and Dodgers and Blue Jays game, and the King's son, the head of our country, Harry, not buying in. He's wearing an LA Dodgers hat.
What's he doing? He's such a. I'm gonna. How do I say this? What's the PG word? I'm looking for? He's such a pillock. He really is such a pillock. That's what I'm going to say. What a fool.
Well, I said
I suppose he does live in that neighborhood. He does live in like the LA area, but obviously, still, he has a constitutional role in the monarchy of Canada.
Oh.
Put a Blue Jays cap on.
But he also lives with Yoko Ono. Or is that Yoko Ono or is that Meghan Markle? I'm not sure. Which one is it? I don't know.
I think Yoko was a lot more talented than her. Yoko's screams on a xylophone, probably.
And the Sudan civil war increasingly being labeled as genocide amid news of yet more atrocities. The ongoing civil war reports of some really awful things. One NGO, Protection Approaches, said there is a deliberate strategy to destroy and displace by rapid security forces groups which emerged from the Janjaweed Arab militias that massacred hundreds of thousands of non-Arabs in Darfur in the 2000s.
Yeah, but I mean, this has been like as explained there. This has been going on ages in this neck of the woods, Darfur. It's the same place. We heard so much about, we heard a little bit about Darfur, didn't we, back in the day? But it seems to have just gone. It's like back of mind now. It's so sad, and it's traumatizing people who are seeing that because they're putting videos on the internet of just the most disgusting crimes against humanity, and I think like there are people out there that must have like PTSD from watching that stuff.
I remember Justin Trudeau saying in Canada that the media treat him well because they should, because he gave them $660 million. I mean, that's not a lie. I mean, he gives them a lot more than that as well. And it seems like the Democrats and the Liberals have gotten a free ride from much of the media as well. But now there's some media outlets pushing back. And here's an interview that Kamala Harris, I watched it, and she just lost her cool when she was being pressed for answers, right? Because she was just doing her word salad stuff, and the reporter said, "That's not the question. That's not the question." Let's listen into what she has to say here.
I want to come back to the book and the purpose of the book. So
this is the last question. We're at time. You gotta go. Sorry.
Yep. Well, that's almost a first, not an absolute first, but to have a member of staff of the former Vice President of the United States actually speak up during the interview to say that we were going too long. I didn't expect that. But coming back to the interview itself, it seems to me at its very heart, there is a reluctance on the part of Kamala Harris to actually spell out and talk about the issues that Joe Biden had as president. Was it Joe Biden's decision, his failure to recognize his own frailties in that position that put you in the position that made it almost impossible to win that race?
He was not frail as president of the United States.
But he had frailties. We all saw the debate. I'm just wondering, is there a reason why you won't go to that prolonged frailty question? Now, we saw the debate. We saw the difficulty he had marshalling his thoughts.
I have answered that question. I do not believe
that I think it's just hard watching the debate to see how there could not be a problem long term with someone who can't marshal their thoughts. I'm not saying his acuity wasn't present.
I talked about that in the book.
It's in the book, but it seems to me she doesn't want to say it on camera. I asked her that. She denied it, but I think there is still a reluctance there to criticize Joe Biden, which makes her current pivot a really difficult one because she's Joe Biden's vice president. It seems she's still not prepared to completely condemn him, but she's got to be a character in her own right without Joe Biden attached in order to have a chance to run again. So that, before I came in, that was the heart of the interview. And it turned out to be the heart of the interview.
I watched the interview, and what I did get out of Kamala Harris is typically just word salads. She got pretty agitated there. But one thing for sure, and it is very clear for Kamala Harris, is she knows how to hawk a book. Because every time you ask, it's in the book. It's in the book. It's in the book.
But she knows as well how to
she should
be
actually held it up.
passive-aggressive.
She should have held up the book and said, it's only $19.99. It's in the book.
Yeah. But the
Or you could also
aggression,
buy
I
it
mean, I
online.
said passive aggression. It was basically just aggression. And those horrible, horrible little media people, absolute slime balls that they are, just trying to interfere constantly,
That's what
messing
I mean.
around with an interview. It's just loathsome.
They feel that they should have. I mean, they were getting just a pass. Like how many times did like Fox call out Peter Doocy call out Joe Biden, and not one in the room of like 400 journalists, Peter Doocy alone would call out Joe Biden's cognitive ability, who never showed up at the podium, and Karine Jean-Pierre would just play identity cards all the time.
When he used to do that, Peter Doocy, when he used to stand up in the White House press room, it was like sometimes I almost felt a bit scared for him. I always thought he was going to get like stabbed in the back or something. There was just open hostility, wasn't there? And there was like muttering and like, this guy. It's like, and then the Karine Jean-Pierre would always just like lay into him, like just ad hominem.
Did Joe Biden under his breath, which was picked up by the mic, didn't he call him an F and B? Something he called him. I can't remember exactly.
And that's purely because he was like the only, or one of the only anyway, journalists that were following around the president that was willing to be a little bit kind of adversarial, a little bit tough.
And then I don't know if you put it out on your X yet. That here's some journalists, I think, still putting out there. Like I mean. You should put that out, no?
I would definitely, put my arm out for a flu shot, even though is there any point for that? I don't know if there's any point. But I was kind of got burned with the COVID shot because it just wrecked my week. Both times I was like, ugh, I don't want that. I don't want to feel ill for that long after having a vaccine. But the flu shot, yeah.
This is our little bit of a meme section there. So sorry, David. We just just that you put it out there. I thought we just put it up here for you and just help you. But Justin Trudeau apparently has ties to the CBC.
It's a very bold style, isn't it? T-shirt and jacket.
He's actually he's actually morphing into the CBC. Yeah,
it's the last organization that respects him.
This is we'll close off with this. This is Thursday. Tomorrow's Halloween. What do you think Ian should wear for a costume, or myself? Maybe we should dress up like the CBC. You can do your hair like that. You're pretty close anyway, right?
And what can I need to find a Liberal Party jacket or something. That one that Trudeau had, which is like the sports jacket. That's what I need.
I think we should both dress like Don Cherry, that super high collar. Bring Don Cherry back. I think some people might think we're Don Cherry anyway.
He was voted Canada's, what was it, the fourth or fifth greatest Canadian or something like that.
Bill Gates has called in to the COP30. He's mailed in his comments to COP30. I don't think he's going to COP30, but he's actually called into COP30. We're going to play his call into COP30 here. Can you get his call? Because Bill is...
Yeah, listen. We fucked up. Yeah, listen. We fucked up.
So Bill is mailing in his comments to COP30 instead of doing the long speech about killing all the cows and selling you synthetic meat and bugs. Wasn't it Justin Trudeau on these bugs too?
And I've got no idea. I do remember there was some kind of bug story, wasn't there? I can't actually remember the details of that one.
He did say you shouldn't worry about your rent or the ability to buy food. There's much bigger challenges out there. And like, you know,
The
climate.
revolution is more important, basically.
Right. And now, basically, he's now the CBC and them are calling him a pop star as he flits around the world with none other than the famous astronaut Katy Perry. Who? What did she do on stage the other day? She milked her. What do they call those? What's the politically correct word for that?
Udders.
Like she milked those. Men, a not man, did that and got, yeah. Justin.
Non-cis male upper private region.
We haven't heard from, somebody said cancel Disney and eat crickets. We haven't heard from our friend Chrystia Freeland. We should invite her in on the show. You think she'll come? She's a fan of the show.
Well, all if you do is say it right now. She's listening, so
call
get on in.
You could. We'll just give you the third frame over there, and you can.
Yeah.
Well, Bill, we mailed in your comments for COP30. Thanks for everything you've done to the world, Bill. And you still make crappy software too, Microsoft. I've never liked Microsoft.
I tell you what, I was thinking about this the other day. All this chatter about how Elon Musk, he's only got where he is because of subsidies and government contracts and things. Has there ever been a company more indebted to the public sector, let's say, government money than Microsoft? The only place you find Windows these days is in banks, like government offices, isn't it?
Schools, just infiltrated. I can remember I was a Windows NT administrator when somebody's going to say something about that probably. I was a Windows NT guy way back then, and I installed some systems. And I can remember at a conference that you go there and they're just like, we kept this Windows NT system up for a week. And there'd be guys there with Linux and saying, or Unix, and they're saying like, ours has been running for years. And you're bragging about a week. Because it was always like the reboot of the system, right? It would just hang up. It's just absolutely crazy. If you like our show, please share and get it out there. We want to try and increase our audience. It is getting bigger, so the more you can do. The Bill C-18 continues to crush local independent media. We need independent voices here in Canada. That's what a real democracy is. And if you could help us share it, that would be great. We have a little bit of fun here too. It's independent media and unfiltered. It's Ian Burns and myself every Monday morning. Every weekday morning at 9 a.m., but you can watch it and you can share, and we cut it up into different segments and stuff like that too. You can find us little clips on TikTok as well. We're on TikTok under Now Media as well, and X and all that other cool stuff.
Chinese propaganda website.
Propaganda website there. China. It'll be interesting to see what happens with Carney's meeting with President Xi. Will he cut or will he pull back the EV tariffs, and will canola be able to be shipped? I mean, Scott Moe would be happier than whatever, a pig somewhere out there.
It's hard to do a PG version of that, isn't it?
Anyway, all right. Until tomorrow. I think I have the food bank in later today, but and then I have the Bitcoin show too. Bitcoin, and food bank record usage. Imagine that. Thank you, and we'll see you tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. We're still here.